Good morning and good afternoon. Um, the Honorable Senator Marie Spain, Foreign Minister, Honorable Member of Parliament, Thiru N.R. Ilongo, Sir, the Honorable Lisa Singh, Deputy Chair, Australia-India Council, Mark Vesella, CEO BlueScope Steel, Preeti Herman, fellow AIYD alumni and Global Executive Director, Change.org Foundation. Friends and well-wishers, it is with mixed feelings that I welcome you all to this event. With the unforeseen restrictions to our lives and lifestyles due to COVID-19, you would appreciate that we have been constrained to hold this event virtually today. Nevertheless, it still gives us tremendous joy to be able to host today's launch of the AIYD Build Back Better report and invite speakers of the highest caliber to lend gravitas to the occasion and thereby create a platform for advancing bilateral ties. The bilateral relationship between India and Australia had witnessed tremendous acceleration during the pre-COVID years of 2005 and 2020. The mutual visits of head of states, the recalibration of geopolitical and foreign policy initiatives to address evolving world order, and the deepening of people-to-people ties have contributed significantly to this. Strategically, also, the India Economic Strategy report authored by former High Commissioner Peter Verghese AO and the reciprocal Indian report by Ambassador Anil Vadwa have formed the basis for a roadmap to elevate our bilateral relationship. More recently, you would agree with me that the 2+2 talks, the Malabar exercise, and a renewed diplomatic commitment to the Indo-Pacific have left other bilaterals with some catching up to do. So around April this year, when we began to realize the true magnitude of the pandemic, the Australia-India Youth Dialogue set out to map how COVID-19 would alter the diplomatic relationship and framework and understand its impact to the diplomatic roadmap to 2035, which is the year set out in the Verghese report. To do so, AIYD called upon its diverse, brilliant, and committed cohort of alumni to weigh in on drafting a post-COVID-19 recovery roadmap strategy. After a series of consultations over the last 5 to 6 months involving 45 AIYD alumni, new Colombo Plan scholars, and a number of interactive panels featuring leaders in the bilateral space, such as and including High Commissioner Barry O'Farrell, the New South Wales Governor, Her Excellency Margaret Beasley, Professor K. Srinath Reddy, President, Public Health Foundation of India, and D.D. Saxena, Managing Director, Riverina Oils and Seeds. We are today proud to present the AIYD report titled Build Back Better. This report is positioned as a common strategic addendum to the Verghese and Vadwa reports, and it builds on the momentum of 2020 and takes inspiration from the virtual summit between the prime ministers in June this year, all the way up to the recent meeting of the foreign ministers in Tokyo last week. The report re-emphasizes the potential of young and emerging leaders in India and Australia to offer something tangible to supplement the COVID-19 recovery efforts of the two governments. The report also lays down a platform for young people to engage and execute post-COVID-19 recovery projects through a $10,000 grant, which AIYD is delighted to offer. My colleagues Bo Edwards and Will Tang will speak in more detail on the report and the grant during the course of this event. So it gives me great pleasure on behalf of the Australia-India Youth Dialogue to extend a warm welcome to our guest speakers, especially the Foreign Minister who is joining us from her home isolation and quarantine, our partners who are here with us, our supporters and well-wishers, and most importantly, our alumni. May I please request Bo Edwards to take us through the report and the proceedings.
Thank you, Manu. Welcome again to all our distinguished guests, our alumni, partners and friends. It is my absolute pleasure to be here with you all today to share what is a vision of young people for the post-pandemic Australia-India bilateral relationship. Now, it was established really early on that young people would be most impacted by the global pandemic. And as a result of the conversations that we'd been having at AIYD around what the next 12 months would look like, it became clear that there were some really major issues facing young people. In both countries, young people are feeling the immediate impact of unemployment, economic hardship, mental health issues, alcohol abuse, domestic violence, trauma, loss, and so on. But this was all happening alongside the efforts to strengthen the Australia-India bilateral relationship. And the CSP in particular has provided a great foundation for new initiatives that can take into account and remedy the impact of COVID-19. However, as our conversations with alumni revealed, the pathways into these opportunities for young people are not entirely clear. We all know that the Australia-India relationship will play a vital role in the recovery of both our countries. And as the generation that will carry this in the future, we needed to be at the table as our countries redesign the way we work and collaborate. So, as Manu mentioned, the AIYD mobilised the intellectual, the strategic and the operational excellence of our alumni, our partners, emerging leaders to better understand the challenges that we are facing, what would need to be in place for us to capitalise on this renewed energy in the bilateral, and then what ideas and recommendations were there for a resurgent and recalibrated Australia-India relationship. So the report maps out a suite of ideas and recommendations by sector that we believe will contribute to the recovery of both countries. First, it looks at 12 months and then at ideas that can be implemented over the course of the next 3 to 5 years. These sectors include education, the arts and media, health, public diplomacy, and underpinning everything is technology and innovation. Now, importantly, these ideas and the sectors that we've presented in the report, they're not meant to be exhaustive. Rather, they're a starting point to foster ongoing collaboration in new, innovative and sustainable ways. And while they're grounded in the present, we anticipate that they will contribute and make an incredible contribution around the enormous changes that the world is going to face as a result of the pandemic. So, with all of that in mind, I'm incredibly proud to launch Build Back Better, a post-COVID recovery strategy. For everyone that has registered, you will now have a copy of this in your email inbox. And for those that are joining us live on YouTube and Facebook, you can access the report on the AID website publications page. So thank you all for joining us again. Ultimately, while many relationships slowed down when the pandemic kicked in, the Australia-India relationship accelerated quickly. And the vision that is presented in this report builds on that renewed energy and the foundation that has been laid by our respective governments. It's through initiatives like the CSP that we've been able to generate these ideas and map out our contribution. And with that, it is my great honour to invite Senator the Honourable Marise Payne, Australia's Foreign Minister, to deliver our keynote address.
Good afternoon from Sydney, everybody. Good afternoon from quarantine, at least for me, following my visit to Japan in the last 10 days, whereas as Manu and Bodin have said, we've had the opportunity to take the Australia-India relationship a few next steps. I really appreciate the invitation from the Australia-India Youth Dialogue for the invitation to speak this afternoon and to be with you. Let me acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I am this afternoon here in Western Sydney, the Darug people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. I also want to acknowledge the many other distinguished guests who are joining today's event. And I think I heard Manu referred to Lisa Singh, my former colleague, former senator, and now Deputy Chair of the Australia-India Council. Fabulous to know you're there, Lisa, and thank you very much for taking up that role. I'm very pleased to play a part in launching today's launch event of the Australia-India Youth Dialogues report, Build Back Better, Post-COVID19 Recovery Strategy. It is an important contribution from the leaders driving the Australia-India relationship in the face of the global pandemic and also in the face of heightened strategic tensions in our Indo-Pacific region. In January, it seems so long ago, just in January, I met with delegates from the Australia-India Youth Dialogue in New Delhi while I was visiting and attending the Raisina Dialogue. When we all stood there taking a very large group photo on the lawns of the Australian High Commission, I don't think any of us could have imagined the year that we have had ahead of us and the year that has come to fruition. 2020 will be remembered as the year when we faced the COVID-19 pandemic that has now claimed more than 1.1 million lives and eroded years of economic progress and of progress in so many other areas, and particularly for women and girls. And I'm very, very focused on that. Yet, as we have responded to the crisis, we have been able to look to friends and to partners. Importantly, therefore, 2020 is also the year in which Australia and India took our relationship to a point higher than ever before. In early June, Prime Minister Morrison and Prime Minister Modi jointly announced the signing of our comprehensive strategic partnership. The CSP takes our bilateral relationship to a new level of cooperation based on mutual understanding, trust, common interests, and the shared values of democracy and the rule of law. It reflects Australia's and India's commitments to working together at a time of unprecedented global challenge. And while the partnership rests on our shared values and visions for the Indo-Pacific, I think it is important to note that it is much more than symbolic. As I told the ORF's Sci-Fi conference in Delhi just recently, the CSP demonstrates in many areas of practical cooperation the depth, the breadth, the maturity of our contemporary relationship. It spans the spectrum of security, economic, environmental, and importantly, people-to-people links. We have committed to formally engage on strengthening ties in science, technology, and research collaboration, in cyber and critical technology, in counter-terrorism, in climate change and oceans, in water, in agriculture, in education, in tourism, trade, investment, and innovation, as well as working more closely together than ever in multilateral bodies. And I know some of those areas of endeavour are, as Bodine said, part of the key areas that you have focused on in the Build Back Better report. On my visit to Tokyo 10 days ago, as I said, I was delighted to meet again with my good friend, India's Minister for External Affairs, Dr. Jaishankar. It was a timely opportunity to reflect on all of the positive progress in our bilateral relationships since the announcement of the CSP, as well as to meet with our counterparts from Japan and the United States in the quadrilateral meeting. We have had a real focus on key strategic issues in the last year. The development of the quadrilateral meeting, the second in-person meeting between ministers, is an important further step in that. Ladies and gentlemen, as one of the fastest growing diasporas in Australia, the Indian community doesn't just enrich our culture, it also helps grow our economy as our largest source of skilled migrants. It's a diaspora that contributes across very important parts of our nation, but none more for me than my home, my workplace of over 2 decades, Western Sydney. It reinforces for me the ties between our countries, the values, the shared interests, the shared ambitions that so many of us had or have and have had for such a long time. The Australia-India Youth Dialogue is a wonderful part of that rich tapestry. I want to congratulate you for your active and positive role in building links between communities and businesses here and in India. In the context of COVID-19 recovery, in the context of the impact on young people, whether they're people who are students, whether they're people in business, whether they're people who are making their way in the world, who have found the impact of COVID-19 to be a truly shattering experience. Putting together this report and focusing on the opportunities of building back better is a very important step that you have taken as a youth dialogue, and I congratulate you sincerely on the work that you have done. I'm also very confident that you, the dialogue, and your report will continue to play an important role in bringing together so many of our best and brightest young people to form future generations of our country's closest ties. I look forward to seeing that build in the coming years. I look forward to watching the growth of the dialogue, and I look forward to meeting as many of you as I can as during that time. Thank you once again. Congratulations and my very best wishes for an exceptional event.
Thank you so much, Minister, for taking the time to join us from quarantine today. We really, really appreciate it. And as you say, 2020 has been a year of new heights for the relationship, and we really look forward to working with you to help contribute to this going on into the future. Okay, so while he was unable to join us live today, we would now like to share a video message from the Honourable Minister of State, Anurag Thakur.
Namaste. It gives me immense pleasure to note that young individuals on the Indian and Australian side have worked together during this pandemic period to come up with Build Back Better, a post-COVID-19 recovery strategy. Congratulations on this meaningful collaborations in furthering ties between our two nations. The COVID-19 pandemic is an important turning point in modern history and offers an opportunity to forge a new vision of globalization, focus on the shared interest of humanity as a whole. The COVID-19 pandemic has unsettled the world, undermined established norms, and underlined the importance of good health in our personal lives, businesses, and the economy as a whole. It has disrupted supply chains, hampered business models. It has made us rethink, reimagine, and reset our lives and livelihoods. In fact, despite the adversity facing us, India and Australia has decided to turn this into an opportunity. Indian Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has talked about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The world is one family. India's approach on climate change through the International Solar Alliance, tackling terrorism globally through multilateral forums, adopting technology and digitalization to empower millions, and even during the COVID-19 pandemic, setting up Coronavirus Emergency Relief Fund by bringing together SAARC heads of state has echoed and found renaissance amongst world leaders globally, including Australia. This is the first time, or you could say that this is the perfect time to further strengthen relations between India and Australia. India is committed to strengthening ties with Australia. It is not only important for our two nations, but also for the Indo-Pacific region and the whole world. As the world grapples with the pandemic, India under Prime Minister Modi has decided to reboot, reform, and research on the path of Atmanirbhar Bharat for economic revival. Atmanirbhar Bharat is the vision of self-reliant India that creates value and wealth for all, accelerates growth, integration, and opportunities for Indians and the world at large. Global economic resilience can be achieved by stronger domestic economic capacities. This means expanding our domestic manufacturing base, a robust financial system, and diversification of international trade. This opens up vast opportunities for Australians looking to expand, collaborate, and accelerate growth. Further, in sectors of defense production, atomic energy, space, logistics, agriculture, food processing, we announced our intention of opening them up and inviting private companies on board. India invites Australia and the world to invest in our growth story and becomes partner of equitable growth and development. India offers Australia and the world a perfect combination of openness, opportunities, and options. And finally, before I end, let me say this. Virtual conferences are the new normal. Collaborations will help us triumph over crisis. Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Scott Morrison recently held their first virtual summit, I think in the month of June. So once again, the very best for your virtual summit, bringing together the very best individuals from two sides, from two nations. I'll say the future belongs to us. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Belong to us. And while COVID has impacted our countries in different ways, we've ultimately been brought together by the constantly growing strategic convergence and the strength of our people-to-people ties. Our next speakers are going to share their insights on the role of young leaders from their perspective of both Australia and India. So first, it is my great pleasure to introduce the Honourable Lisa Singh, Deputy Chair of the Australia-India Council. Lisa is the former Australian Senator and Tasmanian Government Minister. She was the first woman of South Asian heritage to be elected to the Australian Parliament. Lisa is also a compatriot in the human rights world and is currently the head of advocacy at Walk Free, an international human rights organisation here in Australia. Thank you, Lisa, for joining us today.
Thank you, Bo. Thank you so much for having me. And it's a pleasure to address the Australia-India Youth Dialogue launch of the Build Back Better, a post-COVID-19 recovery strategy report, and also to support their vision of emerging leaders in building the Australia-India relationship post-pandemic. And could I also just acknowledge the contribution of Australia's Foreign Affairs Minister and my former Senate colleague, Marise Payne, to today's launch, and thank her for her contribution and commitment to strengthening the Australia-India relationship, and also to our Indian Minister of State that we just heard a message from, Anurag Thakur, for his message of support as well in building our people-to-people ties and building our Australia-India relationship going forward. I'm so pleased to see that the AIYD is playing such a pivotal role at this critical time in addressing the humanitarian, health and economic challenges that are disproportionately affecting young people through the recommendations and the opportunities that are laid out in this very well researched and evidence-based report that we have here today. The AIYD's input through this roadmap report to rebuild the Australia-India relationship and support our recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic is so critical because we need to ensure that young leaders' voices are heard. And like the AIYD, the Australia-India Council also understands the importance of building stronger ties between Australia and India. And as you may know, one of our Australia-India Council board members includes an AIYD co-founder, Ms. Sanushka Seomangal. So earlier this year, Australia and India, as our Foreign Minister shared, elevated that bilateral relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership, the CSP, at a virtual leaders summit. And I think what it demonstrated is that Australia and India have a shared vision for open, inclusive, and a prosperous Indo-Pacific region. Of course, that's underpinned by global and regional rules, norms, and institutions. What I'm pleased to see is that the seeds of this AIYD report have come from that CSP, as well as from Peter Varghese India Economic Strategy, which sets out a pathway to deepen economic engagement with India over the long term. But this report, in identifying 5 key areas of the greatest opportunity for young Australians and Indians to cooperate in the recovery period, and how governments, industries, and communities can take practical action to address them, is such an important tool to help our bilateral relationship build back better. And it really does highlight the critical importance of young leaders' voices in that Build Back Better strategy. Over the past 5 years, two-way trade with India doubled, as did investment flows. In 2019, India was Australia's 8th largest trading partner and 5th largest export market, with two-way goods and services trade valued at $29.3 billion. However, COVID-19 has had a serious impact, as we know, on global trade. So in moving forward, I'm pleased to see that this report recognises how this pandemic has impacted some of the most vulnerable to exploitation in both our countries, and the importance of protecting workers in bilateral supply chains in Australia and India to work to strengthen trade and investment ties as we move forward. Of course, there is substantial complementarity between Australia and India economies, which has the potential to drive growth in both countries as we do build back better. But in this regard, the Australia-India Council will soon relaunch the 2020 grant round, which will support the implementation of the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, including by supporting the recommendations of the India Economic Strategy. The AIC plays an important role in advancing Australia's foreign and trade policy by supporting institutional and people-to-people ties. Recognising, though, the restrictions on travel and social distancing limiting our opportunities for face-to-face engagement, the AIC will encourage applications which support continuity in people-to-people and institutional engagement between Australia and India. This round will target online and other activities or forms of engagement that help bring people together through virtual means like this and build our cross-cultural linkages. There is no doubt that the AIYD and its active alumni helps lift our mutual understanding of each other and our ability to take up these opportunities. And that flows from the unquestionable premise that young people must be at the forefront of our bilateral architecture. Australia and India's re-engagement as it emerges out of this COVID-19 crisis is all the more prepared through this roadmap that the AIYD has delivered to us. I really want to thank the chair of the AIYD Steering Committee and fellow members for activating its strong alumni network and delivering this strategy to help us build stronger ties between Australia and India in the years ahead and ensure that the vision of young leaders impacts our decision-making as we build back better. Thank you.
Thank you again, Lisa, for your insights and your time and for joining us today. We really, really appreciate it. And we look forward to working with you and the AIC to hopefully bring some of these ideas to life. Now, this report represents a vision that is grounded in the incredible wealth and experience of our alumni and our wider AIYD community. So from the alumni perspective, I would now like to invite Preeti Herman, the Global Executive Director of Change.org and 2018 alumni, to share her insights into the role of young people in the bilateral.
Thank you, Bodin. Thank you for having me here. Hello, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon. What a proud moment to be sharing this time with you. I think, especially for this year, the world is facing a crisis and everyone has been impacted by this crisis. And most governments around the world are still trying to grapple with, and in some cases, just even accept the consequences of the crisis that this pandemic has brought about. And fortunately for us, Australia and India have in general been ahead of addressing the pandemic and the crisis. And so this report is very timely for the countries individually, as well as for the Australia-India bilateral relationship. You know what my favorite part of the report is? That these are the decisions and actions of the future, that it is relevant for the two countries who are one step ahead in addressing the crisis. But also, on the other hand, these are ideas, suggestions, and in some cases, steps already being actioned by the leaders of the future. And I mean the alumni, people who are going to be prominent business leaders, prominent political leaders, and social impact leaders in these two countries and for the world. And so the recommendations on public diplomacy education, health, technology and innovation, and arts and media are just the beginning of what they are going to be involved in. I think the ideas here are phenomenal. I'm sure many of them will be involved in building on these ideas in the future as well, as we can already see through the work of some of the alumni. A special shout out to alumni Bindu Subramaniam, who is leading some fantastic work through the Sapa Music Academy, and Mohit Bhargava with the Mental Gym and other initiatives. I just want to say the richness of AIYD is the individuals and leaders who make it. The intellectual bank and passion for social impact that this group cumulatively holds for not just for AIYD, but for Australia and India. This report reflects it. The ideas here, the comments here for the next 12 months and for the next 3 years are seeds of what could have a huge long-term impact as these two countries, Australia and India, build back from this crisis. And so, congratulations, Manu and Boden and the whole steering committee for your vision and leadership and for bringing this together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Preeti. Thank you for bringing so much energy and optimism to the discussion today, and also for all the work that you do every day. Now, we believe that the vision laid out in this report will make an invaluable contribution to the Australia-India relationship and the recovery of both of our countries. So much so that we are prepared to put our money where our mouth is. I would now like to welcome Will Tang, fellow steering committee member, 2019 alumni, and co-founder of leading open innovation agricultural agency Beanstalk, to officially launch the Rapid Response Challenge. Hi, Will.
Hi, everyone, and it's wonderful to be here today. And thank you to all the previous speaker, Lisa, Minister Payne, Preeti, and Minister Anurag Thakur, who had really shed light on where the opportunities are. And whilst the report identified those 5 key areas, again, as Bodine mentioned, this is only a starting point, and you know, a real kind of positioning statement to show how fast and how swift our young leaders can move in this space to share these ideas and actually bring these ideas to life. As Bo mentioned, my name's Will. I'm on the steering committee, and on the back of this announcement of the Build Back Better strategy, I'm pleased to be launching, on behalf of the AIYD, the Rapid Response Challenge. So this might be new to many of you, and especially for the alumni that's sitting there and listening to us. This is the first time the AIYD has done this. So this is unique to us. This is something that we'd recognise is much needed now. And the reason why we've introduced this challenge is to recognise that if we are to lay out a strategy, then we ought to start by backing the incredible talent within our alumni networks that are already making a significant contribution to the bilateral in all their respective sectors. We also recognise that these are unprecedented times, and it's thrown up a whole bunch of acute challenges as well as opportunities. And so by introducing this challenge, we hope to support new ideas, partnerships, and looking to make material impact on this bilateral relationship. And finally, for those alumni that are part of the 2018, 19, and 20 dialogue group challenges, and I know Preeti, you're there as part of 2018, we've learned that the challenge activity has been a defining and key feature for the AIYD participants. We've had the fun experience of effectively dropping you into teams into a pressure cooker environment and observe the power of each one of you coming together, navigating complex cross-cultural issues, throwing up weird and wonderful ideas, but most importantly, bringing it all back to the ground level to propose initiatives and solutions with a clear sense of purpose for enduring relationships and also friendships. So what is this challenge all about? As Bo mentioned, the AIYD has committed to a total of 10,000 Australian dollars available to one or more projects that will be led by our alumni. And it calls upon our alumni to think about ideas and initiatives in the areas identified in the Build Back Better strategy. So across education, arts, media, diplomacy, health, technology, and innovation. And we're calling upon our alumni to really lead the charge here. It must have direct implication for Australia and India's youth, and the applications are open till Friday, 27th of November. So you've got 5 weeks to stick this the thinking cap on. We've got much more details on the landing page website, which we've shared with everyone out there via emails. So we look forward to hearing from you. And finally, we're excited to share also that our distinguished partners, the University of Sydney, Macquarie University, and BlueScope Steel are also part of this journey. And they're looking forward to hearing your ideas, and we'll consider every opportunity to support some of the selected initiatives. So on behalf of the AIYD Steering Committee, our message to you is get those thinking caps on, assemble your A-team, and we want you to be tackling these challenges head on with some seriously bold ideas, and we'll share some of the dates for our information soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Will. This is an incredibly exciting opportunity, and we really can't wait to see some of the ideas that come from the alumni. So to wrap up the formal proceedings, I would now like to welcome longtime supporter of the Australia-India Youth Dialogue, BlueScope Steel CEO Mark Vasella, to deliver a vote of thanks.
Thanks, Bo, and hello everybody, and thank you to all of the speakers and guests, honourable ministers. Firstly, congratulations on the launch of the Build Back Better strategy. Reading the strategy before this event, I was struck by what a wealth of opportunities that exist between our two countries. This is not a relationship that's dominated by one or two products or industries. The scope for cooperation is enormous, ranging across education, diplomacy, media, the arts and technology innovation, and indeed across a number of other areas outside the focus of your strategy. And of course, it's also a relationship built on a range of shared connections: historical, democratic, language, people to people, and sporting. In addition to giving the vote of thanks today, I was asked to speak briefly about BlueScope in India and our reflections on the bilateral relationship. So BlueScope is one of Australia's largest investors in India. Some of you will know that we have a joint venture with Tata Steel. That 50-50 joint venture was established in 2005 and today employs over 500 people across 6 sites, manufacturing coated and painted steel products for the building and construction markets in India. Whilst this has been a difficult and disrupted time for everyone personally, the people in our joint venture have been doing an outstanding job maintaining their personal safety and that of our customers and suppliers, whilst also keeping our businesses running. Despite the closures of our operations in India as part of the government lockdowns, our businesses there have delivered a stronger result in the second half of the financial year to 30 June 2020. An incredible result given all of the issues that they were facing. And thankfully, we've not had any sites closed due to outbreaks of infection. Our Tata BlueScope Steel joint venture is in many ways the bringing together of the best of India and Australia. In India, the Tata brand is ubiquitous, covering everything from salt to motor vehicles to steel. We chose Tata as our joint venture partner due to their corporate values, local brand recognition, well-established distribution channels, and a secure source of raw materials. And as an Indian private sector conglomerate, Tata also understand how to work with the government of India. BlueScope brought to the joint venture its manufacturing skills and experience. It had a long-established expertise in metal coating and painting technology, marketing skills, and customers around the world for our pre-engineered building products. That joint venture today produces a range of steel products that are based on technology, including the well-known global brands such as Colorbond, Lysarts, and the well-known local brands Durashine. Our business relationship is complementary in so many ways, and similarly, the relationship between our two countries is complementary. And a number of these factors have been identified as part of the comprehensive strategic partnership in Australia's India economic strategy and, of course, in AIYD's Build Back Better strategy. 3 areas in AIYD strategy that jumped out for me as being particularly relevant for our company, BlueScope. Firstly, education. BlueScope collaborates with a number of universities and research organisations in Australia, particularly in relation to building products innovation and sustainability. We're a major investor in research and development and employ around 35 PhD scientists. Greater cooperation and collaboration between universities, researchers and students in our two countries, including at the PhD level, is very welcome and has the potential to increase opportunities for individuals and the talent pool on which industries like ours can draw. Secondly, public diplomacy. In an uncertain world and in a region where tensions are rising, greater exchange of people and ideas, particularly ideas from young people, can only help to build stronger relationships between our two countries. And finally, technology and innovation. In the current environment, you've hit the nail on the head with your focus on the resilience of global supply chains. And your focus on climate change is also welcome. In my industry, the steel industry, one of the greatest strategic challenges we face is how we meet growing demand for steel worldwide, which is essential to help raise living standards and build modern economies, but to do so in a way that is much less emissions intensive and in line with the Paris Agreement goals to limit global warming. In short, we need technology breakthroughs, so we would welcome cooperation with India, which is now the world's second largest producer of steel. Before I conclude, I want to put on the record our thanks for the strong support for the Australian government, including the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. They've supported us over many years and indeed many other Australian companies operating in India. I also want to note the strong support from the current High Commissioner, Barry O'Farrell, for the work of AIYD. And I know that the previous High Commissioner, Harinder Sidhu, was also a very strong supporter. So to all of our speakers today, especially our keynote speakers and honourable ministers, thank you very much. I wish AIYD every success with its strategy and its virtual program. And I look forward to catching up with many of you in person, hopefully one day in the not too distant future. Thank you and take care.
Thank you, Mark Vasella. Once again, on behalf of the Australia-India Youth Dialogue, I thank you all for being part of today's event, especially all the speakers who have taken time out today to help us launch the Build Back Better report. Not the least, our partners, University of Sydney, Macquarie University, and BlueScope Steel, who have supported and continue to support our ideas and initiatives. As you've heard, today's event marks the culmination of 6 months of strategic thinking and meaningful collaboration in compiling this report. Over the next 6 months, we will be monitoring the rapid response challenge to unearth and execute the best COVID-19 recovery projects from amongst our alumni networks in order to supplement the efforts of the two governments. While I conclude today, I leave you with the words of Albert Einstein, which High Commissioner Barry O'Farrell recently mentioned in one of our webinars. In the midst of great crisis lies greater opportunities. And I sincerely ask you, each one of you today, to stay engaged with the Australia-India Youth Dialogue as we enable exciting opportunities amongst our alumni and stakeholders in the months and years to come. Thank you everyone for joining us today.